Every Kuwaiti acknowledges that the quality of political discourse has declined. Consequently, many rational individuals, thinkers, and policy influencers have refrained from expressing their opinions due to various reasons.
قضت المحكمة الدستورية في الكويت ببطلان الانتخابات البرلمانية لعام 2022.
The political arena in Kuwait has become dominated by intense arguments, personal conflicts, societal divides, and echo chambers. In our documentary today, we aim to introduce a different form of dialogue, a dialogue that raises pertinent questions that require honest answers.
Kuwaiti politics defies the obvious.
One frequently asked question is Kuwait in danger? Regardless of the answer, it is undeniable that Kuwait is currently confronted with numerous challenges and issues that necessitate wise choices from voters, parliamentarians, and government officials alike.
Have elections annulled and a previous parliament reinstated.
Regarding bullying campaigns, targeting campaigns, and character assassination campaigns, such behavior is not unique to Kuwait, but is prevalent worldwide.
This is a pervasive and harmful phenomenon as it demonstrates a lack of respect for one's own views as well as those of others.
The diversity of opinions is a crucial aspect of freedom of expression, irrespective of how intense the debate is or the emotions it may evoke. It is important to foster open-mindedness that allows for discussions and the existence of varying opinions, even if they are expressed strongly. However, this does not mean condoning insults or a deterioration in the quality of dialogue. Instead, our goal should be to elevate the standards of rational debate where arguments are countered with more arguments.
عندي عفوا سؤال بسيط، يعني كيف يمكن لمجلس منتخب بالكامل من الشعب أن يأتي ليصادر صوت الشعب الذي انتخبه؟
Subsequently, we partake in a cycle of verbal aggression that could escalate to tangible physical violence and legal repercussions. This, of course, is what everyone complains about.
There is a significant amount of frustration within the sphere of Kuwaiti politics and numerous legal pursuits.
You are talking about an outdated concept in the era of technology, as censorship is the enemy of culture and awareness in general.
We often hear about a large number of cases, thousands in fact, all originating from Twitter use. While it is certainly everyone's right to argue, it has escalated into a widespread social phenomenon that demands our attention and study. The behaviour in question here is bullying, leading to subsequent legal proceedings. I believe these cases are not only offensive to Kuwait, but they also impose a significant burden on society as a whole.
The upcoming parliament faces a significant task of reviewing certain laws that infringe on individual freedoms. These are the very laws that have led to the fragmentation of entire families, including the incarceration of young men merely for expressing their opinions and ideas.
It proliferates alongside corruption and numerous other problems.
Being summoned for questioning at the police station, undergoing interrogations, facing prosecution, and attending court sessions are all potential consequences. For instance, expressing your opinion in a symposium, debate, or article could lead to spending 4 or 5 years in prison, starting from the very moment you voiced your thoughts.
I believe we're dealing with a substantial burden from the past. Instead of debating who's to blame, let's remember that we're all affected. Kuwait has endured destruction for many years, but today let's focus on the future, on our dreams and lives. After all, it's never too late to build up our homeland.
This kind of conversation where there's no receptiveness to opposing viewpoints is unsettling. There's a lack of meaningful discussion and exchange of ideas. This environment has led to a state where people are worn out or distressed, and they can sense the pervasive corruption and pressure.
Governments clearly do not favour freedom of opinion. Yet, when a parliament, which is 60 or 70 years old, alternates between endorsing and promoting oppression, it leads to the double standard we are currently experiencing. The same action, when performed by one person, is praised, but if committed by another, it's persecuted. Is the judgment based on the act itself or the individuals involved?
We as a generation suffered greatly from this. It's a significant hindrance to any evolution of ideas.
Regrettably, the members of parliament have enacted laws that curb freedoms. I view this as a collusion between the parliament and the government.
Indeed, censorship is the vehement adversary of awareness and cultural development in any society, not just in Kuwait. In the era of technological openness, censorship has become an obsolete issue, devoid of any value.
I believe it's time for decision makers to understand that there's no conflict between complete respect and appreciation, and expressing political disagreement respectfully and through legitimate means.
Regrettably, the members of parliament have enacted laws that curb freedoms. I view this as a collusion between the parliament and the government.
The solution isn't to suppress dissenting voices, but rather to simply disregard them. This indicates a choice to either act or criticize those who do. Decision makers should first discipline themselves not to be entangled in these conflicts.
This is an alien phenomenon, used solely for mobilization and propelled by certain groups. However, the essence of Kuwaiti society is its enduring state of social peace, and its dedication to the democratic process is a testament to that peace.
All peaceful avenues are open to citizens in societies that have advanced significantly in their democracy. I believe we have made progress. I wouldn't claim that we have achieved the needed level of awareness, but rather we have taken a step forward, and this is evident in the awareness of our youth.
The economic strength of Kuwait is a significant concern, given previously its sudden weakness following the decline in oil prices. This poses a major challenge for the country. How successful have we been in diversifying our sources of income? Furthermore, what will be the impact of our economic issues on our future?
Kuwait is at risk precisely because it is characterized by a constitutional institutional system that guarantees certain freedoms. This unique paradox is indeed a threat as it challenges many regional countries. This, I believe, is the crux of the danger faced by Kuwait as it makes it susceptible to various forms of interference. Hopefully, such a scenario will not come to pass.
Any country is in danger if decisions aren't made wisely, if the nation isn't managed effectively, and if optimism isn't fostered within society through tangible accomplishments.
From my perspective, it's crucial to enhance Kuwait's economic situation, generate genuine job opportunities, and foster real investment prospects. We cannot progress in isolation from other countries in the region. If all the countries in the region are moving in one direction and we are heading in another, this divergence constitutes the real danger.
The economy presents the most significant challenge. We are currently anticipating economic growth through the establishment of relationships and the forging of substantial international partnerships. There has been a delay in economic expansion, and this launch is long overdue. However, I believe the future is promising and the forthcoming developments are encouraging.
Whatever state revenue gets spent on, whether it's public sector employment or, different sorts of economic diversification, that's a sovereign decision, but something has to certainly fund all that. And preserving that type of revenue stream is going to be absolutely critical. There's a long history of a lot of project delays and things like that have taken place, but certainly if it were to be made a significant priority, it arguably is a national strategic priority, then certainly if it were placed at the top of the queue in terms of order of importance, yes, it definitely could be.
I believe this presents a challenge to any Prime Minister or any minister within the Council of Ministers.
We are all contributors in shaping this country. There isn't a single individual who controls the entire process. It's impossible for a single person. Impossible. Neither through physical, mental, or intellectual capacity to comprehend the extent, seriousness, and complexity of the world's issues surrounding them.
There aren't any genuine political leaders guiding the scene towards change. This naturally leads to exhaustion. You cannot accomplish it alone.
Indeed, there are some efforts made with good intentions, but they face opposition. I think this is due to misunderstandings, ignorance, and a lack of earnestness. As I've mentioned before, those who formulate the laws and decisions often lack competence. For instance, a 20-year government employee might theorize and claim knowledge, while another person who starts a small project, having navigated the entire production cycle, might find success. They know where the deficiencies lie, whether in manpower, customs, real estate and rents, or municipal issues. There are capable Kuwaiti minds and experts available who can contribute their insights, but you have to seek them out.
I think the main issue for Kuwait is probably oil volatility. I mean, historically, this is what has battered the Kuwaiti economy the most.
We aspire to secure a future for our children and grandchildren. We don't want to depart from this life burdened with worry about the well-being of our descendants.
If Kuwait does not take decisive steps towards addressing certain issues, we are inevitably steering towards a catastrophe with social, economic, and political implications.
So that means you want to move away, you want to shift away from this rentier culture to make a more productive use of your revenue, again, to stimulate FDI, to make your exports more competitive, and even, if necessary, to reform your banking sector, which makes you immune to any adverse movement in oil price, which has been the case in the past.
There are many challenges in Kuwait. Frankly, it's hard to know where to start.
The statistics substantiate it, the performance evidence it, the signs we observe confirm it. There are various indicators that we are in distress, and this is universally acknowledged. This distress affects the labour market, the calibre of graduates, higher education and development, implying that the country is utterly deteriorated.
Trust can be lost, and it can also be regained. When it comes to these matters, citizens aren't interested in the baseless reforms proposed by some representatives.
Public funds are being squandered. We need to diversify income sources, create job opportunities, and combat unemployment.
If we put everything into a deadlock with no achievements, no optimism, and no potential for change, danger is inevitable. This indeed poses a severe threat to Kuwait and any other country that resorts to stagnation.
The goal and our ability to achieve it is much simpler than what is being suggested. Yes, trust may have been lost at some point, but it can also be regained through the simplest solutions and actions. This means returning to the basic daily needs of the citizens, and we are already witnessing signs of this.
So far, FDI, foreign direct investment in Kuwait, has been mostly a US and Chinese business, but you want to attract capital from more countries, you want to conclude deals with more NOCs, national oil companies, and therefore you need to open up, you need to diversify the range of your investor, and you cannot use your oil revenue to do that. You want a more productive use of your oil revenue.
المبدأ العام إن ما يجوز جيل ياخذ حق أجيال أخرى وبعدين وين حق الأجيال واللي ما زالوا الآن في بطن أمهم ولا لأن الظروف تغيرت وبالتالي هم ضحايا الظروف المتغيرة.
Like in any other country, corruption exists in Kuwait. To what extent has corruption permeated society? What impact does it have on the political landscape, development, and our daily lives? Have our efforts to mitigate it been successful?
It hurts very much. I believe Kuwait is in isolation, not from the entire world, but certainly from our immediate environment.
We face challenges at both the individual and citizen levels. The primary challenge is disillusionment. How can we salvage our citizens from this feeling of despair?
The sense of mistrust or anxiety among citizens is justified. They've made numerous attempts to vote, reform, and enact change. While I empathize with this sentiment, I also assert that it's my duty as a citizen to persist in trying. One must have good intentions, the willingness to act, and leave the outcomes in the hands of fate.
There was a group that wielded substantial influence. This group began meddling in government departments and influencing the country's decision-making process, hence polluting the issue.
In Kuwait, there indeed exists a credibility crisis. The persistent disappointment in outcomes has caused a rift between parties.
There's a need for firmness and resolution in decisions that bring about accountability. Penalties should be made public to serve as a deterrent, not merely handled behind closed doors.
This reality negatively affects the country's development process.
Since 2009, we've strived via the National Assembly and the government to establish the Anti-Corruption Commission. But what has this commission accomplished? Let's be honest with ourselves.
There is, I believe, a love of power, which is a major issue in most countries worldwide. The youth also bear a responsibility to assert themselves forcefully. When I say force, I refer to peaceful force, especially if they feel the state isn't listening.
Has corruption genuinely decreased? Is there actual punishment for corruption and malevolent actors?
Addressing challenges and problems requires recognizing their existence and subsequently pursuing solutions through a comprehensive and systematic strategy along with clear and measurable goals. It is crucial to identify the causes of the problems that we face, then explore potential solutions.
From my perspective, the individuals who make laws and decisions aren't always the most knowledgeable in their fields. I strongly advocate for all of Kuwait's laws and decisions to be scrutinized by experts. Every field, whether professional, educational, health-related or municipal, or even matters pertaining to the Ministry of Interior, requires the critical eye of a specialist.
As for the issue of quota systems in Kuwaiti society, we must remember that we're still a young country in cultural, geographical and political terms. Hence, the confines of quotas, whether tribal or sectoral, are readily apparent and universally acknowledged.
Merit should be the sole criteria, not any other affiliations. It is merit that drives a nation forward.
The competent authorities, whether legislative or executive, can transcend these quotas. It's possible to find an uncorrupted individual from a specific tribe or an honest businessman without any criminal allegations. Thus, as a legislative or executive institution, one can maneuver within the societal imposed quota system and still make the best choice.
At present, I believe it's imperative to reform the political situation as it's far from satisfactory. Such a reform can only come through changing some laws.
Where are we heading? A person naturally finds it hard to embark on a journey with an unknown destination. The same holds for a country.
The ideal scenario is to have experts draft laws and decisions which are then subject to review. Is private interest being favored over public interest? If so, that is unacceptable. Do they conflict with the Constitution? That's also a problem. If they contradict existing laws, we must strive for change if the new proposal is superior, even if it takes time due to the typically slow pace of law changes. Also, these laws and decisions need to be explicit rather than ambiguous. If we rely only on the judgment of those in charge or seek special exemptions, we won't solve the problem. Based on my recent experience, this is the challenge.
While it's undeniable that there will be those who are impacted by these changes, I'm using this interview to urge the formation of a public opinion driven by reform-oriented communities. I assure you these groups exist. They need to see a serious, dedicated government willing to act transparently. Then, these groups will raise their voices in a civil manner and serve as a counterbalance to the disruptive voices currently dominating the discourse.
أود أن أهنئ أخواتي نساء الكويت على حصولهم حقوقهم السياسية، وأتمنى لأخواتي أن يساهمن مع أخوانهم في بناء هذا البلد وفي مستقبل هذا البلد، وأتمنى للجميع التوفيق والشكر.
While people in other countries are denied the right to participate in politics and face restrictions on their freedoms, in Kuwait, we are commemorating this year the 18th anniversary of granting women their political rights. This marks a notable stride towards greater social justice. Nevertheless, it is important to assess the effectiveness and impact of women's participation in the decision-making process in Kuwait.
Drawing from my experience as the first woman to take up a leadership role in the Kuwaiti government and as a representative in the National Assembly, I had supporters as well as detractors. Ultimately, only what's just is right.
There are female ministers who have left their mark. For instance, I'll always remember Dr. Masuma Al-Mubarak, who chose to resign after the fire at Jarrah Hospital. Which of the men have done this? They usually cling on to their positions until the very end.
Firstly, I'd like to express my gratitude to Mr. Walid Al-Jassim for his kind words, reflecting his noble character. I always emphasize that I do not regret my decision to resign. If I could go back in time, I would do it all over again, because a person's actions speak volumes about their character.
Especially in politics, women's involvement is largely seasonal, only coming to the forefront during elections. Women must strive for their rights. Unfortunately, Kuwaiti women have fallen short in this area. While they have made significant strides in public benefit associations, their political involvement remains limited. This reflects in the underrepresentation of women in the council. A woman cannot achieve larger voting numbers.
As we approach elections, we note that women constitute approximately 52% of the voters. I want to say to these women, my sisters, it is a great disappointment if we don't see multiple women secure parliamentary seats.
The role of women in society and politics is still a subject of debate. I am not a fan of discussing women's rights in isolation from human rights. Human rights apply to everyone, regardless of gender.
You're asking me 18 years after women were granted political rights, where do we stand? And I have another question that arises, where are we now after 70 years of democratic practices for men in Kuwait? In the end, an individual with clarity of thought and capability will leave a lasting impression, man or woman.
We are on the verge of witnessing a new National Assembly and a new government, both of which will encounter numerous challenges during this crucial stage. What is the approach to overcome intense conflicts? And what can we do to foster an environment of progress?
The role of the Speaker of the National Assembly requires fostering a positive relationship with the government, as the Constitution endorses such collaboration. My initial advice is not to hinder progress. As for the Prime Minister, their inner circle can unintentionally undermine the Cabinet and its relationship with the National Assembly. Thus, we must aim for progress and stability in Kuwait's political life in the next phase, as we are genuinely weary.
واستقرار للحياة السياسية بالكويت لأن تعبنا حقيقة التعاون بين السلطات كلها. Firstly, effective collaboration between all authorities necessitates a break from the societal norms enforced by Kuwait. I believe the Speaker of the National Assembly should conduct sessions without injecting personal views unless they step down to the representative seats. The Speaker's role involves managing sessions, mediating disputes between representatives, and withholding personal opinions while presiding. For the Prime Minister, we have many capable, reformist and patriotic citizens. Selection of ministers is significant, yet those serving under them are more so. For instance, in education, it's crucial to know who oversees the curriculum, evaluation, performance monitoring, and overall educational planning. These roles, often overlooked, hold more importance than the ministers.
There's an issue when someone with a career in a particular job believes they know better than specialists in other fields, such as teachers, doctors, and business owners.
The commencement of a solution resides in the clear reformative vision of the executive authority. The subsequent step involves full empowerment and independence for the executive authority to develop and implement this vision, in alliance with a legislative council that prioritizes collective citizen interests. Unfortunately, some populist rhetoric confuses personal desires with collective interest. We need a legislative council aligned with the government's reformative vision, which works for citizen interests. Politics isn't perfect or guaranteed, but citizens must remain active as progress is always victorious. This isn't mere political chatter, but a choice for our country.
A government with a clear vision must lead, and representatives should follow that direction.
If I were to advise the Kuwaiti government about the introduction of new policy, I would introduce an option to channel more efficiently our revenue to a broader range of sectors within the economy, and make sure that we keep developing the infrastructure, keep the upstream sector up to date, and even boost production if necessary, since this is what foreign buyers want, and also promote the downstream sector, which is becoming essential to a whole set of buyers outside the region.
Despite the different opinions regarding whether Kuwait is in danger or not, there is a consensus among the speakers that we are facing numerous problems that cannot be ignored or resolved with temporary measures. It is imperative that we find comprehensive solutions before it becomes too late. Some individuals believe that the current government differs from its predecessors and genuinely aims to implement substantial reforms. However, there are also those who contend that certain influential figures are resistant to these reforms and will impede progress that may undermine their own interests, regardless of its benefits to Kuwait and its citizens. Consequently, we require parliamentarians who cannot be swayed or influenced by such individuals or groups, because if the status quo persists, it will undoubtedly impose significant costs on all of us and jeopardize Kuwait's well-being and its future.